I once lived a life that everyone thought was fine. I had a stable job and a decent salary. I had friends, family, and social media filled with smiling photos. I knew how to respond to every "how are you?" with a forced smile. I'm fine, same as always. But the truth was, inside, I was slowly emptying out. There was no major shock that caused me to collapse immediately. No one betrayed me cruelly. No major events occurred. It was just, every day that passed, I felt myself losing a little bit of light. Every morning I had to fight with myself to get out of bed. I did everything mechanically: eat, work, go home, scroll through my phone, smile when I had to, sleep when I was tired. But my heart was like a locked room with no warmth left. I started to feel tired, but I didn't know why. It wasn't physical exhaustion, but emotional exhaustion. I didn't care about anything anymore, not even the things that used to excite me. Books, music, conversations, everything became dull. There were nights when I lay in bed with the lights off and found myself falling into a deep, dark void. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was living for. I don't know if tomorrow is worth waking up for. I still smile when I see my friends. I still meet my deadlines. I still post stories like everyone else, but no one knows that I am slowly dying inside. I used to think I was strong. I used to tell myself, it's just pressure, it will pass. But month after month, year after year, the small cracks in my heart have turned into a deep abyss. I feel like a beautiful house on the outside, but the foundation is rotten. It's just waiting for a strong wind to collapse. And then, the wind began to pick up. A close relationship fell apart. A loved one fell ill. Work wasn't the same anymore. It all came slowly, but like a chain reaction. I couldn't hold on anymore. I started losing sleep. Then I lost my appetite. Then I lost the will to live. No one could see it from the outside, but every night when I was alone facing the ceiling, I knew the darkness had truly begun. I didn't know where I was headed. I only knew that if anyone asked me, "Are you okay?" I wouldn't have the strength to lie anymore. And that's when I started thinking about the end. Not the end of a relationship, not quitting my job, but the end of everything. I didn't know that was when he began. When I was exhausted, when I collapsed, when I had nothing left to hold on to, God began to pick up the pieces of me. But I didn't realize it. Not yet. I was just drifting, slowly, toward the abyss I didn't know the bottom of. And that abyss was the next chapter. There are stages in life when you think you are walking on a flat road, then suddenly the ground beneath your feet collapses. For me, that moment did not come in a single day, but was a series of collapses piling up. It all started with the death of a loved one, someone I once believed was my last refuge. We weren't as close as in the movies, but just knowing they were still alive made me feel secure. Then one cold morning, a message arrived. He's gone. I sat motionless for hours, no tears, no emotions, just emptiness, as if my soul had been drained. And from that day on, I began to spiral downward faster than ever before. Work had once been where I felt valuable, but with my mind in turmoil, I couldn't focus or find motivation. I started making mistakes, missing deadlines, and getting criticized. From someone who was praised, I became someone who always needed help. I hated it. I hated myself. I began to believe that I was truly useless. My personal life wasn't any better. The person I loved, the one who promised to always be there, left. No clear reason, no final handshake. Just a short message. I'm sorry, I can't continue. I don't blame them, because I understand. I was a difficult person back then, easily irritable, full of unhealed wounds, but that doesn't make the pain any less. I began to fear the night. I feared the moment when all sounds faded away and only the echoes of my own thoughts remained. I feared the lights going out, feared lying down, feared opening my eyes to a new day, because I didn't know what to do. I used to be someone who helped others. Now I couldn't even help myself. I began to torment myself. I wondered why I was alive. If I disappeared, would anyone really be sad? Would anyone even notice? I sat for hours on the balcony, looking down at the ground. Just one more step, The thought became clearer. It wasn't scary anymore. In fact, sometimes it felt good. I started writing farewell letters, then tore them up. I wrote down my passwords to leave for my loved ones, then deleted them. Each time I did this, I fell deeper into a dark abyss. I was no longer myself. I was a person suffocated by loneliness, guilt, and despair. I didn't tell anyone, not because I didn't trust anyone, but because I didn't think anyone could understand. I had hit rock bottom. I had no hope. I had no dreams. All I had were cold nights, dry eyes, and a broken heart. But strangely, in the midst of that emptiness, a tiny ray of light began to shine. It wasn't bright. It wasn't enough to warm me, but it was the first sign of something coming. I didn't know that I was preparing to meet God. I used to think that if I was brave enough to speak up, everything would be better. If I just spoke up, shared my feelings, and cried my heart out, someone would stay. But I was wrong. Once I tried hard to tell my best friend, "I'm so tired. I don't know how much longer I can take this." The response was a light laugh. "Who isn't tired? Rest. Don't think too much." I fell silent. I tried to smile back, but inside a part of me broke a little more. I wrote long messages to my loved ones, telling them I felt lost and empty. The response was a short sentence. "Just try to get through it, kid. Everyone goes through this sometimes." They weren't wrong, but those words didn't touch my pain. I tried posting cryptic statuses on social media, hoping someone would pick up on my signals. A blurry photo, a sad song, a lonely status. A few likes, a few casual comments. "Don't be emo. Sleep it off." No one asked, "What's wrong?" No one called, no one came. I felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit, screaming and hoping someone would hear me, but all I heard was my own echo. The more I try to open up, the more distance I feel. The more honest I am, the more lost I feel. And then I choose silence. I start wearing a perfect mask, smiling at the right times, nodding in the right places, posting happy photos. But when night falls, I curl up like a child no one wants to hold. I sit at the family dinner table, feeling like I'm on another planet. Everyone is talking and laughing, discussing work and family matters. I eat quietly, listen, nod, and disappear inside. No one sees me. No one hears me. I become invisible, right in the middle of the world I know best. I don't blame them. I know they have their own battles to fight, but I began to believe that maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm not worthy of love. Maybe, and disappearing is the best thing. Loneliness isn't when there's no one around. It's when there are many people, but no one truly sees you. And then one night in a dark room, I sat curled up on the edge of my bed and whispered silently, "If there's anyone out there, if there's a God, please hear me." I didn't expect anything. It was just a desperate plea. But maybe those words reached heaven. I made a plan, not in a day, but over many weeks, silently, carefully. No one knew. I wrote letters by hand, folded them neatly, and tucked them under my pillow. I rearranged my phone, deleted everything unnecessary. I sent a few goodbye messages. The recipients probably thought I was just feeling down. No one suspected a thing, because I had learned to hide everything very well. That night, it rained lightly. I sat in my room with the lights off. The only light came from my phone screen, where I typed the last line of an unsent message. "I'm sorry, I tried, but I can't go on anymore." I put the phone down. My heart raced. Then it slowed. Then there was only silence. I thought I was strong enough. I thought all the pain was about to end. Just one moment, one final act, and it would be over. No more heaviness, no more loneliness, no more feeling of failure. I closed my eyes. And then it happened. I can't explain it. There was no light from heaven, no thunderclap. It was just a feeling, a very strange feeling, like someone was placing their hand on my shoulder. Warm, gentle, not scary. I opened my eyes, but there was no one there. Then I heard, not with my ears, but with my heart, "I know you're hurting, but I'm here." I burst into tears, not because of the pain, but because I was seen. For the first time in many years, I felt that someone truly understood what I was going through. I no longer wanted to die, not because everything suddenly got better, but because a tiny glimmer of hope had just appeared in the thick darkness. I didn't know what it was, a dream, a hallucination, or God. I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. That night, I didn't die. I sat there until dawn, crying, breathing, silent, and living. From that moment on, something inside me began to stir. It wasn't faith, it wasn't salvation, it was just a question. If God is real, can He save someone like me? I didn't know the answer, but for the first time in months, I wanted to know. After that fateful night, I no longer thought about death every day like I used to, but I wasn't truly alive yet. I was just existing. I still woke up every morning, still made coffee, checked my phone, dragged myself to work. But my heart began to listen more, to listen to the little things, the things I used to overlook. One morning I walked into my usual coffee shop. Nothing was out of the ordinary until the barista, a young woman, smiled at me and said, "You look tired today, but I believe you'll be okay." I was stunned. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know what I had been through. Her words weren't fancy or religious, but they made me want to cry. Another day, I accidentally played a random playlist. A song came on. The lyrics made me stand still in the empty room. Even if you fall into the depths, my hands will never let go. I don't remember the name of the song, but every word, every note felt like it was calling out to something I'd kept hidden for so long. I listened over and over, and for the first time I felt my heart begin to soften. At the same time, I saw a small sign as I passed by the old church where I used to go as a child. "You are not forgotten. God is waiting." I didn't plan to stop, but my feet seemed to be held back. I stood before the old wooden gate, looking through the fence. No one called me in, but inside me something was gently knocking. Small things, a word, a song, a sign, things others might overlook. But to me at that moment, they were the first signs that I hadn't been abandoned. I began to wonder, is this real? Is God trying to tell me something? I wasn't sure. I was still skeptical, doubtful, and hurt. But I started to pay attention. I paid attention to the life around me, to the morning sunlight, to the laughter of children in the park, to the greetings from strangers. Things that seemed meaningless suddenly became the first rays of light in my soul. I didn't dare to believe it right away. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't go to church. But every night I whispered in my heart, "If you are real, and please keep knocking, I'll try to open the door." And He continued, not rushing, not forcing. Just small steps, whispered words, gentle touches in the deepest part of my heart. I had heard the name Jesus since I was a child, in history textbooks, in a few old movies. To me, He was like a distant figure, mysterious, unreachable, unrelated to my chaotic life. In fact, I once thought, if God really exists, He probably only cares about moral people, not failures like me. So I never really paid attention. Until one day, an old friend sent me a short video clip. "I don't know what you're going through, but when I watched this, I cried. I almost ignored it. But out of curiosity, I gave it a try." It was the testimony of someone who had been addicted to drugs, had wanted to commit suicide, and then met Jesus in an unexpected situation. The person didn't preach. They didn't quote the Bible much. They just spoke with tear-filled eyes. I couldn't find a way out, but God didn't wait for me to save myself. He came and said, "I love you." I burst into tears, not because the story was so similar to mine, but because for the first time in my life, I heard the name Jesus not associated with rules or punishment, but with love. I began to seek out more, not because of faith, but because there was something in that testimony that spoke to the deepest pain within me. I watched videos of people who had been depressed, who had lost everything, and found God in the darkness. They weren't perfect, they weren't holy, but they were touched, they were changed. I remember one person saying, "God doesn't wait for you to change to love you. He loves you." and that love will change you." Those words shattered every religious prejudice I had ever held. I thought I had to be good enough, holy enough, worthy enough for God to accept me. But now I see. He loves me even when I am dirty, doubtful, and broken. No one forced me to believe. No one made me convert. It was just that this love was so different, so real, and so necessary for my heart at that moment. That night, I sat in my dark room, put down my phone, looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "Jesus, if you're really like that, I want to know you, not because of religion, not because of fear, but because I'm so tired. If you are truly love, please come." There was no thunder, no miracles, just a strange peace that filled the room. I no longer felt so far from him, and for the first time, the name Jesus made my heart feel warm. I used to think that prayer was for religious people. You had to memorize it, follow a set pattern, use the right posture and words. I used to mock, "Prayer? Who has time for such nonsense?" But then, I reached my limit. That night, I didn't have the strength to calm myself down. I didn't want to hear any more fake words of encouragement. I didn't want to curl up in my blanket and pretend I was okay anymore. I just wanted to collapse. The room was silent. No lights, no music, no one around. Just me, and an emptiness so big it felt like it was going to swallow me whole. I walked to the corner of the room. I don't know why. I wasn't prepared. I just knelt down for the first time in my life. No prayer came to mind. No Bible verse, no theological understanding, just a few choked words. "God, if you're there, if you really exist, I don't know how to pray. I don't know what to say, but I need you. Please save me. Just hear me." I burst into tears, not tears of pain, but tears because I felt someone was listening. Not my imagination, not a hallucination, but a presence, gentle yet very real, enveloping me. I felt someone who didn't condemn me, someone who didn't ask, "Why did you wait so long?" Someone who didn't demand that I understand everything. Just, "I am here." I sat in that silence for a long time, no longer rushing, no longer frantically searching for a cure, just letting my heart breathe again. I didn't become a good sheep right away. I didn't understand everything in the Bible. I still had doubts, fears, and unhealed wounds. But I knew this. I had spoken, and someone had heard, and that was enough for me to start over. I used to think peace meant when all my problems were solved. No more debt, no more sickness, no more sadness, everything back in its place, neat and orderly. Then I would be at peace. But after my first prayer, I was still unemployed. I hadn't reconciled with my family. There were still empty nights and unhealed wounds. The next morning I woke up. The sky was still gray. Outside the window, the traffic was still bustling. But inside me, there was no longer the chaos of before. No longer the suffocating feeling when I opened my eyes. No longer the desire to disappear. I sat up, took a deep breath, and realized. Last night was the first night I had slept through the night in months. No nightmares. No waking up in the middle of the night with tears. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't hear God's voice. I didn't see a light from heaven. It was just a quiet peace in my heart. Not indifference, not surrender. Just rest. A very small voice in my mind said, "I am here. You don't have to fight anymore." I began to notice the difference. Before, every ring of the phone would send me into a panic. Now I still startle, but I'm not afraid like I used to be. Before, I avoided everyone, afraid of their stares, afraid of their questions. Now, I'm still not ready to see anyone, but I no longer feel invisible. I tidied up my little corner of the desk, opened the window, placed a blank sheet of paper on it, and wrote, "Today I am still breathing, I thank God." This peace did not come like a storm sweeping away all suffering. It came like a small stream seeping into dry ground, little by little, drop by drop, but it seeped deep into the roots. I began to understand, peace is not no more storms. It is knowing that I am being held by the hand in the midst of the storm. Nothing outside had changed, but inside I was no longer the same. That night I turned off the lights, lay down, and no longer curled up in fear. I closed my eyes and whispered, I don't know what the future holds, but I know you are here, and I am enough. And I fell asleep. After the first few days of peace returned, I knew I couldn't stop there. If there was someone who had heard me, touched me, brought me peace, then I had to know who he was. I didn't want to just feel him. I wanted to know. I wanted to go deeper. An old friend who had invited me to church a few years ago was still in touch. I hesitantly sent a message. Do you know anyone who teaches basic Bible study? I don't know where to start. She replied almost immediately, I'm part of a small group that meets every Thursday. Why don't you come try it out? No pressure, just a few people, very friendly. I hesitated, then I nodded. That evening I went. It was a simple room, about 8 people. No stage lights, no loud music, just friendly faces and a Bible open in the middle. I sat at the end of the table. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to say and I didn't understand most of the terms they used. But there was something different from the religious gatherings I had imagined. No one criticized me. No one asked, have you been baptized? Or, how far have you read in the Bible? Instead, they asked, how did you feel last week? Is there anything you see God doing in your heart? What would you like us to pray for you? I had never been asked such questions before. It wasn't because of what I did, but because of who I was, a beginner. I started reading the Bible. At first, it was difficult to understand. It was dry. There were many passages I didn't know how to apply to my life, but a few verses began to touch me like never before. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I will never leave you nor forsake you. He is close to those who are brokenhearted. Each sentence was like a familiar whisper from the one I had felt in the darkness. Gradually, I learned to pray every morning, simply. I wrote down what I was thankful for each day. I began to listen more in my heart, instead of trying to control everything with my mind. I wasn't as shy as I had been at first. I didn't understand everything, but I believed I was on the right path. Because for the first time in my life, I saw that faith wasn't a dead religion, it was life. I looked at the people in the small group, their eyes, their smiles, and there was something very real. They had also been broken. They had also doubted, but they were being transformed day by day. I realized I am not alone. I don't have to be perfect to start following God. I just need to keep going. I had heard many people say, I met God. He touched me. I'm not the same person anymore. And to be honest, I used to think those were just fleeting emotions or illusions. I was too used to living by reason. I needed proof. I needed logic. But then God didn't come through reason. He came through love. That day I went to the prayer meeting as usual. No special expectations, no healing or life-changing themes. Just a regular Thursday night. We sang simple hymns, quietly. The lights were dim. No one preached endlessly. Just, let God touch your heart. Don't say anything. Be still and listen. I closed my eyes and sat still. And then, it happened. I can't explain it. There were no angels. There was no thunder. But inside me, it was like a river bursting forth. A feeling I can't describe. Warmth, peace, safety. Love so overwhelming that I began to cry. No one touched me, but I knew for sure that He was there. I felt like God was whispering to me, not with words, but with an undeniable presence. I see you. I have never left you. You are mine and I love you. I bowed my head, tears streaming down my face. Not because I was in pain, but because for the first time in my life, I truly felt unconditional love. Love that didn't ask what I had done. Love that didn't remind me of my mistakes. Love that didn't demand that I be worthy. It was simply, I love you, right now, just as you are. When I looked up, the room seemed unchanged. Everyone was still sitting quietly praying. No one knew the profound thing that had just happened within me. But I know I have met Him, not in my thoughts, not through other people, but I met Him in my heart. I left that day walking under the streetlights. The breeze was blowing and I whispered, "I know you are real. I have met you, and I will never be the same again." After meeting God, I no longer saw life through the same eyes. It wasn't that everything around me had changed. It was me. Who was changing? I no longer woke up feeling weighed down. I opened my eyes and saw the morning light as a gift, not as a new battle. I began to appreciate the beauty of simple things again. The sound of birds singing on the balcony, the smell of morning coffee, a message from an old friend asking how I am. I used to live without noticing any of these things. Now I know. Life is a gift. My mind is also being renewed. The accusations that once echoed in my head, "You're worthless. No one truly loves you. You have nothing to live for," are losing their power. Instead, I memorize Bible verses like medicine for my soul. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. I no longer saw myself as a survivor. I began to see myself as loved, chosen, reborn, part of a plan greater than I could ever imagine. Of course, there were still times when I stumbled. Old habits like self-blame, sadness, and isolation still surfaced. But this time, I didn't beat myself up like before. I know I can return to God, without blame, without abandonment. Every time I fall, I hear him whisper, "Get up, I am still here." I am also beginning to change the way I see others. Before, I was suspicious, cautious, or jealous. Now I am beginning to feel compassion, forgiveness, and blessings. I am no longer weighed down by old wounds. I don't need to hold on to painful memories to protect myself. God has been healing me little by little. One day when I looked in the mirror, I burst into tears. Not because I was discouraged like before, but because for the first time, I saw a person of value looking back at me. Rebirth is not a moment, but a process. Every day, every choice, every new step. I am not perfect, but I am no longer the person I used to be. There is one thing I once thought was impossible: forgiveness. It's not that I didn't know it was important. I've heard it many times. Forgiveness isn't because the other person deserves it. It's because you need to be free. But how could I forgive someone who had brought me down? How could I let go when they never apologized? I carry my old wounds as part of myself. I tell myself I'm okay, but the truth is, I still remember. I remember every harsh word, every time I was abandoned, every look of contempt. I hold on to those memories like a shield to protect myself, but I didn't realize that it was that shield that was suffocating me. One day while praying, I whispered, "God, I don't want to hate anymore, but I don't know how to forgive. I can't do it." And I heard a very soft voice, "You can't, but I can." I began to pray for those who had hurt me. At first it was awkward, even full of resentment, but I kept going. Then one day I heard myself say through tears, "I forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because you forgave me, and I want to be free." Strangely enough, at that moment the weight lifted from me. No more anger consuming my heart. No more sleepless nights dwelling on the past. No more pretending to be strong so I wouldn't get hurt. I felt lighter than I had ever felt before. And then came the hardest part: forgiving myself. I used to hate myself for being weak, for letting myself fall so low, for not being as strong as everyone thought I was. I used to think, God can forgive others, but what about me? But at that moment I read a verse in the Bible. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come, I cried, not because of my sins, but because of forgiveness. God didn't see me as the person I used to be. He called me by a new name, his beloved child. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's taking your hands off someone else's neck and off your own. Freedom is not the absence of pain. It is freedom from being controlled by pain. Now, when I think of those who hurt me, I no longer feel anger. I feel compassion and even gratitude. Because without those things, I would not be where I am today. I wrote in my journal, "Today I am free, not because I have forgotten the past, but because he has broken the chains that bound me." I used to think that faith was a private journey, that my encounter with God was between me and Him. My family, though loving, always kept their distance from anything spiritual. We weren't opposed to faith, we just didn't care. When I started to change, they noticed. They didn't say anything, but I saw the surprised looks when I no longer snapped over little things. When I made an effort to help, listen, and be more patient, they looked at me like there was something different about me. One day, my mom asked gently, "What's been going on with you lately? You seem different." I just smiled and replied, "I'm learning to love again, from the beginning." I didn't preach. I didn't force anyone to read the Bible or go to church. I just lived authentically with what God was doing in me. And then something unexpected happened. One evening, my sister knocked on my door. "Sister, you seem so peaceful, not like you're pretending to be okay. How did you do that? Can you tell me?" I sat down and told her, no script, no doctrine, just the truth. From the depths, God pulled me up. And He loves me, just as I am. My sister was silent. Then she cried, not because she was moved, but because she was also struggling in her own darkness. From that day on, we began to pray together. I didn't dare to expect much. But just a few weeks later, my sister said, "Sister, I want to come to the small group with you." I was speechless. I knew God was at work. It didn't stop there. My father, once a stern, quiet man, began to call me out to talk. He didn't talk about God. He just said, "I feel like you're not the same person anymore. You're living with more hope. I'm happy about that." I couldn't believe it. The man who had made me feel invisible was now acknowledging something so loving. Gradually, my family began to open up. Not because I convinced them, but because God's light was reflected in small, honest, and persistent changes. One night, our whole family prayed together before dinner. It was simple, no fancy words, but I will always remember it because it was the first time I saw my family as a complete family. Miracles aren't always big things. A miracle is when a heart opens up. A miracle is when someone starts to believe that they can be loved. I remember the first time I shared my story in front of many people. I'm not a good speaker. I never thought I would stand up and talk about my pain and the miracle. My heart was racing in my chest and my hands were shaking as I held the microphone. A question kept echoing in my head. What if I say something wrong? What if they don't believe me? What if they laugh at me? But deep inside there was another voice. Tell them, just as you lived. No need to embellish. Just be honest. I began with the raw truth. I once wanted to die, but God entered my life at the very last moment. No one said a word. The room was silent. I spoke about the sleepless nights, about the moment I decided to end it all, then about the first light, about the inexplicable yet undeniable change. I spoke as if I were talking to my younger self. When I finished, I expected only silence or a few polite nods. But then, a girl approached me, her eyes red and tearful. She took my hand and whispered, "Your story is like mine." I thought I was the only one. Thank you for having the courage to speak up. I was speechless. No further explanation was needed. I knew God didn't just save me, He wanted to use me. From that day on, I began to share more. At first, it was with a friend, then with a small group. Then there were times when I agreed to share with strangers because I believed the truth had the power to heal. I'm not a hero. I'm still weak. I still stumble, and I still pray every day. But I've learned one thing. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses obedient people. Once I shared my story in a short post on social media. I didn't expect much. But just a few days later, I received a message. "Thank you. I was planning to commit suicide, but because of your post, I stopped." I burst into tears, not out of pride, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for what God has done in me. And now it's not stopping with me. Sharing my journey is never easy, but every time I do, I see a door open in someone else's heart. A ray of light, a tear, a smile, and I know. My story is a testimony to God's unwavering love. I no longer keep my testimony as a sacred secret, but as a flame that needs to spread. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real. I once thought, once you believe in God, everything becomes easier. That faith would be a smooth path. No more loss, no more heartbreak. But I was wrong. That season, storms came crashing down, suddenly and fiercely. The job I had poured my heart into, suddenly downsized. I lost my job. Not long after, a beloved family member, someone who had walked with me in the early days of my faith, passed away suddenly. I was stunned, heartbroken, lost. In the past, with blows like these, I might have crumbled. I would have retreated into my old shell, hiding, blaming, and silently dwelling on my pain. But this time, something was different. I was still in pain, but I didn't break. I remember sitting alone in an empty room, tears streaming down my face. I didn't utter a word of complaint. I only whispered, "Lord, I'm still here, and I know you are too." I opened the Bible, not seeking a miracle, but a place to stand. And those words touched my heart. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. Isaiah 43:2. I held on to those words, not as empty words of comfort, but as a lifeline anchoring me in the midst of the whirlpool. I began to learn an important lesson. Faith is not the absence of difficulties. It is the presence of God in the midst of those difficulties. I don't understand everything that happened, but I know He has not abandoned me. He did not promise to spare me from the storm, but He promised to walk through it with me. Day by day, I keep going, not by my own strength, but by the strength of the one I rely on. After months of waiting, I found a new job. It is not glamorous, but it is a place where I feel at peace. The pain of losing a loved one is still there, but I know I will see the person again in my Father's house in heaven. Now, when people ask me, does faith really help? Does it change your life? I smile and answer, faith doesn't promise an easy life, but faith gives me a place to stand when everything else falls apart. And I know that without God, I would not be here to tell this story. Amidst the storms, I still stand firm because He holds me. After long days alone with God, I began to realize something. I need other people. I need people who also believe, who also stumble, who are also walking the path of faith like me. At first, I was hesitant. I was afraid of being judged, looked at differently compared to others. I used to think, they must be good, perfect people who know the Bible by heart. But then I gave it a try. A small group, just a few people. I walked in, hesitant, keeping my distance, but they welcomed me with genuine smiles. We didn't start with spiritual things. We started with real stories about our hurts, our failures, our moments of wanting to give up. One person had struggled with alcohol addiction. Another had lived in shame. Another had prayed for years without answers. And I had wanted to die. We were not alike in age, circumstances, or the way we spoke. But we had one thing in common. God had touched each of our lives in ways no one could have imagined. I began to open up. I shared about the dark nights, the moments of weakness. No one laughed, no one preached. They sat beside me and listened. One person placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "You're not in the darkness anymore. We'll walk together." I began to see, faith isn't just about being alone in a room. It's about being together. We prayed for each other. We shared meals. We sent messages to check in when someone was gone for a few days. I had never known a community like this. No one had to be good. No one had to be perfect, just genuine. Gradually, I felt like I belonged, not because I did anything good, but because God had placed me in the right place, among people who had also been broken and were being healed. I learned that God didn't save me so I could live alone. He placed me in His body, the church, where I am loved and grow. Once, during a gathering, I quietly looked around the room. The yellow lights, the laughter, the sincere prayers. I shed tears, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in many years, I knew deep in my heart, I am not alone. I belong. And this is the new family He has given me. After the initial vibrant days of faith, days filled with emotion, tears, miracles, and a strange peace, I entered a new phase. living out my faith in reality. It was no longer about the overwhelming emotions of each gathering. It wasn't always about seeing fire or supernatural signs. Life is still life. There are still bills to pay. There are still moments of exhaustion, difficult people, and unexpected challenges. I once asked God, "Where are you in these small things? Do you see when I'm stressed over a work email? When I sit alone in a cafe and feel lost?" And then I began to realize He was still there, but not in a loud way. He was walking with me in the quiet moments. When I managed to control my anger, perhaps it was Him gently reminding me. When I spoke words of comfort at the right time, perhaps it was Him whispering in my mind. When I felt peace in the midst of chaos, it certainly wasn't my doing. I began to learn to walk with God, not chasing after emotions, but taking steady steps, one day at a time. Early in the morning, I opened my eyes and whispered, "Lord, I need you today." Then I start the day, not with perfection, but with dependence. I learned to listen, not just when I read the Bible, but also when I wash dishes, walk, or work. I learned to pray silently in my heart, during a tense meeting or while waiting for a red light. I learned that God is not only in church, He is in every ordinary moment if I know how to look. Sometimes I get lost, take a wrong turn, but instead of blaming me, He patiently guides me back. I no longer run out of fear, I walk out of love. The one who did not abandon me in the depths will certainly not abandon me on the journey of life. One day while washing dishes, I suddenly remembered a verse from the Bible. "In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight." I smiled, yes. He guides me, not only in big decisions, but in every small step I take each day. I no longer hope that faith will be a grand adventure full of miracles. I know that true faith is living with God, one step at a time, and I believe that He is still walking ahead of me. Even though I can't see Him, He is still preparing the way. And when I take a wrong turn, He gently leads me back. I don't know what lies ahead, but I know one thing for sure: I am not walking alone. I used to think that changing myself was nearly impossible. I was accustomed to being angry, closed off, and wearing a mask of strength to hide my weakness. I carried burdens from my past, from my family, from wounds I didn't want anyone to see. But one day as I look back on my journey, I suddenly realized I am no longer the person I once was. No longer am I the person who wakes up feeling tired, empty, and wondering, what's the point of living? No longer am I the person who falls into the darkness with silent tears, not knowing if anyone is listening. I no longer hold on to resentment like a shield. I no longer let anger control my reactions. I no longer feel worthless, as if my existence is a mistake. I didn't change overnight. I didn't become a saint after one prayer. But little by little, the cracks in my heart were filled, not by my own efforts, but by His love. I remember one day during a group meeting, someone said to me, "You're smiling differently. It's so gentle, so real. You're not forcing it anymore." I smiled, not because of the compliment, but because I felt the same way. I no longer tried to be loved. I knew I was loved, just as I was. The words of Scripture rang clear in my heart. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old is gone, the new is here. I don't need to run away from my past. I don't need to pretend to be a better version of myself. I have been reborn from the roots up. I still have flaws. I am still being perfected. But I know I am not the me of yesterday. I am a child of God. I carry within me a new life, a new identity, a new future. And the most real change is not what others see. It is the peace within. Where there was once emptiness, there is now grace. I am a new creation. I am not a product of my past or my wounds. I am the work of the Creator, reshaped by grace, love, and hope. There was a time when I thought, I'm not good enough to talk about God. I have so many mistakes, I get discouraged easily. I'm weak. How can I dare to testify? I used to think that testimonies were only for spiritual people. Those who lived exemplary lives, had teaching experience, and knew a lot of Scripture. I, who had been depressed, had attempted suicide, and didn't trust anyone. What did I have to share? But then God reminded me, you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be honest. And I began to speak so softly, so tremblingly. Once in a small prayer group, I shared about the moment when I almost took my own life. The room fell silent. I almost regretted speaking, but after the meeting, a young person approached me, their eyes red. Your story is like mine. I'm at that point right now. I was speechless, and I understood. What I thought was shameful was the key to opening someone else's heart. I started sharing my story more often, not with polished words, but with my heart. Each time I shared, I felt my wounds heal a little more. And each time I shared, I saw at least one other person comforted, hopeful, pulled back from the edge where I had once stood. I understood more clearly than ever the words of Scripture. We have overcome the world through the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. Testimony is not just recounting miracles. It is the real mark of a life that was once dead and is now alive. I am not a pastor or a missionary. I am an ordinary person, once broken and torn apart. But I am a living witness that God is real. God saves people, and God does not abandon anyone. I share my story, not to be applauded, but to tell someone who is like I once was. You are not alone. I was there, and I know someone who can bring you out of the darkness. I am a witness, not because I am good enough, but because He loves enough to turn my brokenness into living words. I wanted to die, not once, but many times. Death seemed like the only way out when darkness swallowed every reason to keep going. I didn't want to try anymore. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I just wanted to disappear, gently, without anyone knowing or caring. But God knew. He didn't let me go in that dark night. He touched me, not with a thunderclap, but with a gentle whisper in my broken soul. He said, "You're not finished. I'm still writing your story." From that moment on, I was no longer the same person. I didn't live just to exist. I lived because I had met God, not through reason, books, or religion, but through a real encounter between a broken soul and the one who loves unconditionally. I came back to life, not to start over, but to live with a new purpose, to testify that God is real. Grace is real, the miracle of real life. I no longer keep this story to myself, because I know somewhere there are still people like I once was, lonely and unknown, smiling during the day but crying at night, considering death because they have no reason to live. To them, I just want to say, I was there, but now I am here because I met God. I dare not promise anyone that following God will make life smooth. I only know that with Him, I am no longer alone, and that is enough. I live, not because I am stronger, but because that love is stronger than death. And I will never stop saying, I wanted to die, but now I live. Because I met God and I was reborn. I have shared my story with you, from the darkest depths of my soul to the moment I was reborn in the unconditional love of the one I once did not believe existed. I am not telling this story to elicit pity. I am telling it because I know there is someone, perhaps you, who is walking through a similar darkness. I am telling it so that you know, you are not alone. I once thought I was a mistake, that no one understood me, no one needed me, no one loved me enough to pull me back. But now I know, there is one who never gave up on me. He is still waiting, still loving, even though I am full of wounds, full of resistance, full of doubt. I don't have answers to every question. I'm not saying I don't fall down anymore, or that I'm not hurt anymore. But now, every time I fall, I know there is a hand reaching out to catch me. Every time I get lost, I know I can call out, Lord, please lead me back. If you are in the midst of darkness, if you are desperate, or if you have ever thought about ending it all, please slow down a little and listen for that call, even if it is just a tiny glimmer of light. Because sometimes miracles do not come with thunder, they come in silence. I no longer live for myself. I live to testify to the love of one who walked through the darkness with me and brought me back to life. If He did that for me, He can do it for you. I have met God and I am alive. What about you? Are you willing to open your heart to meet Him